me to introduce you to the most electrifying
podcast.
という技
来ますよ来ますよダメだ
Wait a minute!
Oh my god
Like, I remember him sitting down once, and he was like, "Aren't you tired of having to eat healthy?" And then he just starts eating bacon and like McDonald's and shit. What if I told you could eat all the bullshit you want? And you just started like stuffing food down.
Yeah,
his
he
face.
did that for like 15 minutes and then never did it again, right?
Sure.
Anyway, he apparently is super duper rich. Like, he became rich because of his like workout routine scheme thing.
Yeah.
And then he quit it, and now he's an art dealer. Or something
Really?
like that. Yeah, now like
I was thinking about him the other day. I'm like, whatever happened to the big jacked up Asian guy?
I'm pretty sure it's something like that. I'm pretty sure it's like an art dealer or like real estate or whatever. But like, he went in, he hit it hard, he hit it fast, he made a lot of money, and then he pulled out, and now he's doing his own thing. Like, I think he wrote a book or whatever, you know, like that kind of shit. I wonder, how must it feel when you've reached the quote-unquote success of the goal that you're trying to make, and then you get rich or whatever, and you have to ask yourself, now what?
Okay, so this is very fascinating to me. I call this the lottery winner theory.
Okay.
So this goes back to narrative.
Yep.
In my opinion, and this is why when poor people get money, it usually falls apart very quickly, as opposed to old money who has had it for a while and they know what to do with it.
Sure.
Like, poor people have no concept of what it's like to like not have the same issues anymore, and to sort of be in a place where they're financially stable, so secure in fact that they probably don't have to worry about taxes, right? Like, if they ever are lucky enough to get there, they lose it very quickly, you know, and it all falls apart.
I'm going to jump in here. I heard that this theory about why people who are the new rich or who become the lottery winners, they lose all their money, is because they're not accustomed to the culture of having a lot of money. So, yeah, they don't know how to use it the way
That's part of it.
traditional rich people use it. Like, traditional rich people who built themselves up, like, there's a few different variations of the rich, right? There's the old money rich who have been rich forever,
Fucking
who have
Rockefellers
made money using their money, right? It's like, and that's what rich people will do. They tend to be stingy as fuck still. Like, they're quite stingy, right?
Sure.
Like, they have a lot of money, and what they do with their money is they invest it to make more money.
And the thing with them is that they're also not attracted by the same things that poor people are, because it doesn't interest them.
Exactly.
Because it's not something that you haven't created this like relation of not being able to have that. Like, they could get a Ferrari whenever they want, but they've always known that they could have one since they
already have them.
Especially if you're old money, right?
Yeah.
If you're a DuPont or something, like, you probably knew you could get one since you were 12.
Or you did.
Or you were in
and
many of
you've
them.
already experienced all that shit from like a younger age, so that fantasy fulfillment aspect doesn't exist for you because it's normal, right? Like, did you remember there was this thing a couple years back, it was a pretty big buzz going around the internet of like rich kids of Instagram. Do you remember this? And there was these accounts of rich kids on Instagram where they would like take videos of themselves or post videos or pictures of themselves with like Louis Vuitton bags or super expensive shoes or whatever, and be like, yeah, this is trash, and they just like throw it away or destroy it.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What was the purpose of them doing that?
The purpose of them doing it is to say, like, look, these high-class brands that you give a shit about literally mean nothing to me because I'm so rich. It's like you having a supermarket bag. You don't give a shit about that, and you will throw it away once you're done using it. I'm the same thing. Like, I don't care. I can buy Louis Vuitton like that. Doesn't matter to me.
Well, that's a shitty way to do it, because that bag could have gone to a poor person who could have then sold it.
Yeah, essentially they're
but I mean, I get
just
what
being
they're
assholes, but
yeah, but I mean, I get what they're doing. It's just kind of shitty. But no, absolutely, dude. That's what it really comes down to. I think with narrative, right? If you really, for me, this is all tied to your life story. And if you're poor, and if you've been poor, let's say the first, 25 years of your life, right? Your entire, search in life, your pursuit is after the other side, right? What is it on the other end? When I no longer have to worry about certain things, I no longer have to worry about X, Y, and Z. I don't have to worry about taxes. I can now actually like buy things that I like. I can now like create my own business if I wanted to, or like indulge in things that what would that be like, right? If you get that, what's next? And I don't think most people, especially poor people, know how to answer that question because they're only preparing their entire narrative up until the point where they get it.
I think that
But
still,
after that, it just
that
gets
still
really
works
murky.
for other social classes as well, I would say. It's just it manifests
mostly the
itself
middle
in a
class
different way. I think that's probably more of an overarching existential issue that people have in terms of if you are motivated and trying to find that next level in your life, once you reach it, that what's next question will inevitably come whether you are dirt poor or hyper elite rich, right? This comes back to the me, like it sounds like these platitudes and it sounds like an after school special, but it's really the truth, right? Like your life is meaningful as you determine it to be, right? I remember I read a thing that Mark Cuban said very famously a couple years ago, where he's like, oh, I wish that I wasn't so lazy when I was in my early 20s. Like, I think the guy became a millionaire when he was 24 or something like that, right? But he looked back at his past and his accomplishments, and he's like, yeah, I didn't work hard enough, or I wasn't serious enough about my future when I was a young man in my 20s. And if freaking Mark Cuban, he's what, the owner of the Jets or something, or the Rockets
I think
or
he's
something
the Dallas
like that?
Mavericks, but
One
he
of those,
also
right?
like, he's done,
Right,
he
he's
owns
super
a lot of
duper
shit,
rich.
yeah.
The point here is like, if even a guy like him or I don't know, your Elon Musk's, they get to this point where they have this insane track record, and they look back on themselves and they are quoted as saying like, yeah, I really haven't done that much. Then what is the average Joe and Jill on the street supposed to think about their own life and their accomplishments? It comes back to that, like, okay, well, you find your own meaning, right? I'm sure there's a guy in Vermont who's a bee farmer who's like very satisfied with his life because his plan has worked out and he's just super passionate about bees.
Probably.
Right? Could be.
Good for him.
I don't know if that has anything to do with what the hell we're talking about today, but
We'll find a way to tie it in.
okay, so we have been recently getting onto the topic of the century of the self and like Bernays and stuff, right? And like how that's evolved or evolving. If you look at the way that mass control was done back then, it was under the assumption that the masses are too idiotic to know what's good for them, so the elite need to give them or tell them what they want. But now it's gotten so freaky, like you are giving all the information about yourself to Facebook, to big corporations, and they log that. Yeah, exactly. This is the word we're looking for. Big data. They log that, and now big data is like, whew, it's everything. Big data is everything. Because I don't need to try and manipulate you if I can literally analyze all of the personal information that you have been registering throughout your entire life on the internet and then break that down to identify statistically what you would actually want to buy. So then, and I don't know how I feel about this because at the end of the day, you are being advertised things that you actually might want. So it comes down to a question of if I'm advertising to you a product that you want that's actually going to like make you happy, and you spending your money on that is going to facilitate that experience, why not? Like, I do not know enough about anything, honestly, to really make a good argument
Well,
for or
I'm an
against
expert
that.
on big data.
Yeah, but I think
No, I understand what you're
big
saying.
data is very, very interesting, and
Sure is.
if I don't want to get too personal here, but looking at my own Facebook advertisement charts or like the trends that happen there, Facebook doesn't know what the fuck I am.
Isn't that good?
It's great, but it's very strange because it turns out that I click on Japanese ads more than I click on English ads. But then it uses geolocations to target me. So I remember I had a Japanese advertisement about money exchange with the picture of the currency as Brazilian real.
Okay.
Yeah, right?
What? Okay.
So it was a currency exchange advertisement targeting me under the assumption that I was using Brazilian money. Which it wasn't wrong, right? Like their data from my input so far, it was correct, right? Okay.
Because you're buying like what? You bought plane tickets to Brazil. Or
I was in Brazil at the time or something
you
like
were in
that.
Brazil.
Yeah.
Jesus, they're fucking terrible.
Or it knew that I had bought Brazilian plane tickets to Brazil at the time or whatever. So they're like, okay, let's advertise to this guy in Japanese about currency exchange. It has to do with where he's going, blah 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 blah. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy how specific it is, right? Because I guess if you remember the older days of like advertisements, it was just kind of like before. I mean, if you like, I guess you could say maybe the early days of big data, where it was just basically just Facebook, or even before that, it was just kind of like
would it have
ads for
been?
things
Maybe
that were
Google. Google probably was the dawn of big data, wasn't it?
probably the beginning of it. You
Yeah.
know, you would check what people are putting in their search engines or what your cookies are, what your histories are,
Sure.
and based on that, they would send you sort of like a hodgepodge of things they think you like. But now it's so specific that they can really pin down exactly where you were, what language you speak, what currency you're working in, what like the last 5 things you looked at on different websites were, what you're more than likely to even type into the search engine or onto Instagram or whatever. It's nuts, man.
Well, have you
It's so specific.
have you seen that video of the guy who he writes down a word on a piece of paper? It's a YouTube video, and he says, "I'm going to prove the fact that Google is always listening through your devices." So he writes down the word dog toy, right? He said, and he shows it. He says, "Okay, I'm going to start talking about this word in the next minute, and I'm going to start talking about it like it's something that I'm going to buy, like it's in a conversation or something, and then I'm going to go on incognito mode in Chrome." Google Chrome, and go to one of these websites where you have the ads, the banner ads, right? So he says, just to prove that like I didn't do this beforehand, I'm clearing my history, I'm going into incognito mode, and I'm gonna start talking about this thing now. So then he says, oh yeah, I've been thinking about getting dog toys, maybe a red dog toy. I have a dog. I really think that I should get a dog toy for my dog. I want to buy blah blah blah. Then he goes onto the site, and dude, it's ridiculous. Like, red dog toy, first banner. Yeah. Anyway.
So basically, he had a clean Google Chrome with no history saved or nothing. It was completely clean in incognito mode.
Yeah.
And then he just started saying like keyword dog, 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 dog.
Dog toy, dog toy, dog toy,
And then
dog toy. Yeah.
and then he went on other websites that were completely unrelated to dog toys.
Yes.
But the banners were saying
Yeah, the advertisements there were advertising a freaking picture of a red dog toy. So,
wow,
great, right? Like,
they know everything. I mean, it's kind of nuts, right? I mean, take a look at both our laptops, right?
yeah, we have the
And that's super common.
the camera is blocked out. Yeah.
You know how many people do that? Probably a good amount of people are doing this now.
I'd say the trend has gone up in recent years. It might be one of those batter Meinhofer effect things where when you start to notice it, it appears everywhere.
Yeah.
But since I put mine on, that subsequently influenced Rafaela to put tape over her camera. And then when I look at other people's laptops, I see it more, like just people on the street, right? Like in cafes or something. So I wonder if it's because I'm aware of it, I'm seeing it more, or if it's actually just because people are getting more paranoid as more information like this, Google is always listening to you,
That's
type
one
of
thing I have to put.
information gets out, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. It's I think people have probably been a little more paranoid, Maybe after the Snowden stuff came out. That was kind of a huge moment, right? When like
Edward Snowden sort of like started divulging all like the whistleblowing things.
Sure,
with the
yeah, of
NSA.
course.
He
Well,
was,
I
like,
mean, the information that we learned from him was kind of
very
disturbing because basically, the US government is tracking everyone pretty much all the time, and we can get into your information, your personal stuff pretty easily. I mean, one of the big steps after that in terms of privacy and neutrality was, you remember there was that shooting, the one in California where the guy committed suicide and they found his phone, and it was an iPhone, and the FBI wanted Apple to build a back door to the code so that they could get the contents of the phone, and they're like, we're not going to do that. That goes against our policy.
Yeah. And then a hacker or something just did it.
No,
Was that it?
I think.
How did it work?
I think basically it left itself unresolved. Like they were not able to get into the phone without the phone bricking itself, because Google said like, we are not obligated to give you that, and we don't have
Actually,
it.
yes. You know what's crazy? I was working for Apple for that, and
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was working for the company when that happened, and I remember there was like a huge, like, the vice president of retail, this lady named Angela. She
was what, like retail in New York, or like
the whole company.
Wow. Okay.
She would send a video to all the different stores whenever there was like a big event, and then she would kind of do like a little debrief for like the team or whatever.
What do you mean she would send a video?
Like she would send all the different Apple stores a video.
Okay.
Speaking or debriefing on what happened in the world during the week, or what we're gonna change, or what we're gonna do here as a new policy at Apple, or whatever. And one of the things was this, and she said, like we're standing by our stance. Like she was she was basically saying, like, dude, we're not gonna bend. Like we're not gonna like open up your phone. We're not gonna do it.
I
remember when that
agree with
happened.
that, actually. Like I think once you start getting into that kind of, I heard this the other day. I think the concept was, I'd heard about it before, but it was reinforced the other day when I was probably listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, in terms of, if you have something, so we'll use Apple as the example here because we're already talking about it. If Apple breaks their policies even by just 1 degree or 1%, then that opens the door for them breaking their dedication to an idea by 2% or 3%. And once you start doing that, it's a really slippery slope, because where do you stop, right? It's better just to stick to your guns and stay true to your initial intentions and just not bend, even if that is, I mean, Apple's a freaking corporation, so they don't have any issues with that. But I think this could be transferred over to personal aims, more like if you're an independent creator and you say, I want to make this thing, and you get popular, whatever it is, we'll just say this, right? Like this is our wrestling podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We haven't talked an iota of wrestling so far, but
beautiful,
right? Like you say, I'm going to do a wrestling podcast, and then you get a little bit popular, and we'll say whatever it is, Blue Apron comes to you and they're like, hey, we're big fans of wrestling, and we also love to send food to people's doors. I'm not, funded by Blue Apron. It's just the first thing that came to my mind. But you know what? We really think that you should talk less about this and talk more about that. And then that's when your vision starts to change. So that's where you have to ask yourself the question, like, what am I doing this for? And do I want to be funded and like make money by doing it, or do I want to stay completely independent and have freedom? Because oftentimes once you get sponsored for stuff, you have to kind of compromise Depends on the people who are funding you, right? But anyway,
That's true.
kind of an interesting little side point there, I thought.
Yeah. Now, how do we tie this into wrestling? I know. Actually, I don't know. This is going to be kind of.
I would say, you know what?
There's
I
ways
was
to tie
thinking
this
about
in. Actually, there
I
are
was
ways to
thinking
tie this
about
in.
that. Like, I think that's probably like a great example of this is Stone Cold. Because when Stone Cold was sort of doing kind of well, not really, mid-Carter as working for Million Dollar Man as the ringmaster. You remember this?
Yeah.
He was, in his own podcast, he mentioned like he hated that gimmick. He's like, whatever, the ringmaster is bullshit. Like, it's not Steve Austin. Who cares about the ringmaster?
Yeah.
Who even remembers what his gimmick was? Do you remember?
What was the gimmick again? He was a Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase
Yeah.
was his. He was his.
He was part of the
He
stable.
was the manager, and I guess it was like, I can't. Yeah.
You
it
can't
was
even
like,
remember, right?
Well, yeah, no, because he barely had it. It lasted for like a couple of months, and then he like shaved his head.
And
did
it
the
doesn't
whole-
really matter that much either, because the point that I'm trying to make here is once he gave up the ringmaster gimmick for the Stone Cold gimmick, I guess he talked to Vince or something and he's like, let me just be this guy, you know, the Stone Cold gimmick, because it's really more me. And I can cut the promos the way I want to cut them. He's talking genuinely. And I think that's the point here, right? Like, this genuine element that wrestlers bring to their characters. Another good example of this is The Rock, right? Stone Cold, when he became genuine in his character, freaking gold. That guy was on a strapped to a rocket and he got to the top really quick. When Rocky was Rocky Maivia,
baby.
everyone hated him, right?
It was pretty. Yeah.
And then
he was
he joined the Nation of Domination. No, it wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah, it was
he
Nation of
did.
Domination,
He did
right?
Join the Nation of Domination.
He became a heel. He started cutting these oh my god, just searing promos.
Well, he had a little bit of a run. I think for like a year with the Nation of Domination, he was Intercontinental Champ, and then I think it was when the promo started coming out was after that. 'Cause
Really?
that was around the era that he was involved. Yeah, because he was already sort of getting the push. Now what happened was he leaves Nation of Domination. I guess the WWE got behind him, and they were like, and then he was also sort of like they put him along with like Vince and the Ministry. This is like
yes.
the Ministry of
That's
Darkness
right, yeah.
and like all that. So he started slowly getting pushed into the scene.
Right.
At the time, Austin was the champ and he was the man. And then it was around that era that he started to start. Like after that, he started cutting
Started
the
getting
promos.
boomed,
That's when the
yeah.
promos started coming and like the catchphrases, and then it was just off to the fucking moon.
But the point
From
here
there.
is, right, like, when you are not given a character that you have to act, but you're allowed to have that creative potential in a gimmick or a character that actually reflects who you are, then you're going to get some of the best true wrestling gold. Not necessarily wrestling in the ring, but, you know, the characters themselves. These, like, charismatic, larger-than-life entities who are really, honestly, the reason why, at least I watch wrestling, right? Like, great matches are great. Like, and NXT is amazing because of its matches, but its character work is also basic, clean, and easy to understand, and it's great. It's not overly complicated and convoluted and a million different storylines running at the same time, which is what happens on Raw. They have stuff that spans 2 or 3 months because they only do 2 or 3 episodes per month. So the writing staff has a little bit longer to work on the stuff and have continuity, makes sense. Whereas you'll have Samoa Joe come out on Raw one week, disappear the next week. He'll cut a good promo, and then it won't lead anywhere. And you're like, that's confusing for the fans. It's not great for the wrestlers. And where do you go with it, right? But I talked to my brother about this a lot. In the age of the PG era, the problem is everything is scripted, because if you go off script, maybe a wrestler is going to say something that's like, you know, off color, or it's not in line with the PG era. values. And I think the only guy who is allowed to kind of still cut his own promos is John Cena.
Yeah, well, the thing is...
But I don't know about that. I just heard
But
that.
mind you, we're also, like... We were talking about how the WWE is trying... And the thing about... This is the thing about wrestling, right? It's been PG. But every now and then, there's, like, a little bit of, like... They kind of just allow a little bit of some PG-13 stuff to happen. It's happened a couple times throughout the last decade plus. There's been these little moments where they allow it to happen. Big moment, for example, was just a couple years ago when Brock Lesnar wrestled John Cena and completely
it's a bloodbath, right?
beat the living life out of him. Did the same thing to Randy Orton which is weird because, you know, the days where you're allowed to show blood, it's like it rarely happens these days. But they were savage. I mean, it was pretty shocking the way that Brock just completely battered Cena's brains in, and then the same thing to Randy was nuts. It was like some straight Attitude Era level, you know, bloodbath type of shit. So they'll allow it every now and then, and now it's even crazier because with the whole Becky Ronda thing, where it's just kind of like, you know, let's let Ronda just be herself. You know, and she's just basically calling her by her real name and like,
do you think that
this? Like, this is bullshit. in my world, I'll fucking
is that
murder
a
you.
work or is it?
This is the idea. I think it's all a work. I think the idea is to make people question if it is or if it isn't, because remember, in the modern day of wrestling, everybody knows. It's so meta that everybody knows it's meta, and therefore you kind of have to like screw people up, and you have to make them wonder what is kayfabe and what is not.
Yeah,
to get them kind of like confused.
That is a strange and interesting like psychology of modern wrestling. The fact that we just said, is that a work? Is like, it's so, there's so many layers that you could dissect behind
absolutely.
that. But
It's
at the
great.
same time, it's what wrestling has become, just as the nature of the beast. As fans get more and more into it, there's more and more information on the internet. Like, it's harder to guard the secrets of the industry that they used to be because, you know, guys have retired and they're like, I don't care, I'll cut a promo for, I'll do an interview for this website and they'll give me money because I'm like,
shoots and
right? And like, the shoot interviews and all that stuff.
Yeah, just like dirt sheets getting leaked to all the
Sure.
like the scripts and what's gonna happen, and like it's inevitable, and it's been happening forever. And it's really, if you think about it, this is what separates wrestling from just about every art form there is. It's the fact that it's a running show every week. It continues and it just moves on and on and on and on, and at any moment, like, and it's something like the fans are knowing. For the most part, there is a massive culture of wrestling where you know what's going to happen already. And it's not necessarily that it matters, it's more, will they do what I want them to do? What you care about is that you're going to see the matches that you hope will be better for that character. If he's a heel, will he get his comeuppance the right way, where everyone goes home happy? Will they put the right guy in the main event? Will they not? It's more a matter of, I hope they write the script the way I want them to write the script.
What you're talking about is like hardcore fans, right?
Because,
this
accounts
obviously,
for like probably a small percentage, maybe
you're talking about
15%.
like you and me type.
But
fans.
keep in mind, I really do think that what we call the smarks, I think that's
What's a smark?
smart mark.
Okay.
It's
right, yeah.
The savvy wrestling fan. I think that demographic has grown a lot compared to what it used to be.
Sure,
Like
well,
a lot.
they
Like it used to be
say-
pretty tiny.
Let's-
Now it's fairly large.
Let's look up the actual numbers here now that we do have our our high tech.
Oh look,
Our high tech research facility.
man.
What
So
is
high-tech.
the main demographic for we'll say WWE in 2018, right?
19.
What is the biggest age demographic WWE television? I'm saying 18 because I think those numbers are going to be a little bit more complete than
Yeah, that's true.
right. So blah blah blah. Reports have shown that the median age for pro wrestling fans is 54.
No.
There's no way that's
Can't-
correct.
That's not possible.
Hold on, I might be reading this. Okay, 2018 showed record low ratings for Raw, nearly 26 years after apparition. Blah blah blah. It doesn't seem to have those numbers. WWE fans are getting older, but why? Okay, here's a Forbes article.
This is what I've sort of been thinking. This is what I'm sort of getting
Dude,
at here.
it's saying the same thing.
This is what I'm getting
Median
at.
age for pro wrestling TV viewers jumped from 28 in 2000 to 54 in 2016.
That I don't understand. That's a little too old. That sounds crazy to me. I wasn't
Okay, so
expecting
now
that.
even if we do the math there, we'll say I'm 28 years old in the year 2000 and I've continued to like wrestling for 16 years. That would only make me 44 years old, which is still 10 years younger than the projected average age in 2016 is 54. So does that mean that people who are older are becoming WWE fans? Or are these fans that have been fans for a long time? I'm going to give you a weird statistic here. Now, this is just anecdotal data, but my brother, he's 32 right now. No, 33, actually. He got my parents into watching wrestling. Okay, about 2 or 3 years ago. Now, my mother is 62, my father is 82. Don't think about the age difference too much. And they watch wrestling now. And my mom said to me the other day, she's like, "Oh, I hope that they don't waste Ricochet now that he moved up to Raw." I'm like, that was a completely coherent and like informed wrestling fan opinion.
That's a Smark move. That's like what a Smark says.
Right.
I hope they don't. I hope they value his work rate.
Yes,
and he stays
right?
on the main show,
Right?
and they don't completely like squander his talent.
And I was like, what is happening here? My 62-year-old mother knows about basically what is the WWE brand of indie wrestling, maybe more than you do, because you don't watch NXT.
I don't even watch it
Right?
as much as your mother does.
So it's like,
I probably I mean I probably watch it. I probably watch NXT less than your mom does, which is insane. But this is really fascinating, right? Because then that opens the door to another question, which is what is getting older people interested in professional wrestling?
yeah.
Because if you think about pro wrestling, right? I guess the general theory or the general idea is that it's like a thing for kids. You know, it's always kind of been.
I wonder
but-
if that's true anymore. Though.
But it's not.
Yeah,
it's
definitely not.
really questionable in 2018, and I've been thinking about this a lot. Right? You look at now the demographic that I mean this is freaking crazy because I thought okay the demographic for wrestling is going to be probably between 25 to about 30.
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
Right? You're talking about people who probably used to watch wrestling during like the Attitude Era possibly, and then they are finding their way back into it because there's so much talent, so many organizations are doing well, and now there's like the sort of the older fans are returning because they want to be a part of it again, and they're doing it from like this metafictional point of view where they know how the business runs, but that's what makes it entertaining.
Yes.
And add to it the fact that the wrestling now is empowered by this like subculture that is growing larger on YouTube, right?
That's
like
true.
all these different, including this podcast, even though it's just starting off, but What Culture and like who's the guy
Wrestle Talk.
Wrestle
There's
Talk.
a lot of the British
Who's
ones.
who's
and they're
the Von
on-
Villett guy, like the guy that interviews people? I forgot his name. Something Von something. He's
I
a
don't
really
know.
cool guy.
I don't know
But
his
there's like
name.
there's a Sam Roberts show. Like you have all these dudes, right? You have Paul Rosenberg, who's like the hip hop guy that also does wrestling, gets a lot of views. So this is like definitely helping these people stick around because now you have a real ecosystem of wrestling fans that's like existing not just on like the people that watch the show or on internet forums, but they're on YouTube all the time watching content. So the wrestling ecosystem is really bigger than it's ever been, you know, and it's super important, dude. Like that's huge. That's why like when you watch these freaking like radio shows, Roman Reigns is on it all the time. Like Roman Reigns or like Seth Rollins is on it. Like they're constantly doing interviews for like these types of guys because the WWE probably wants them to.
Sure.
The wrestling industry now needs to work hand in hand with digital influencers that are into wrestling because it keeps the thing growing over and over again. It makes it bigger.
Right.
You know?
That's probably also why they're never going to say to Stone Cold or Jericho, like,
To
you
not do a
can't do
podcast.
your podcast.
Yeah.
Because those names are WWE copyrighted, right? As far as I know.
I believe
think they
so.
are.
I think
right?
so.
But, like, the Stone Cold podcast, one, you could probably fight that in court. But two, like, no one in their right mind in the WWE is going to tell Stone Cold not to do a podcast because, like, he's still one of the most popular names in wrestling
Yeah, sure.
to date. And, like, sometimes he promotes and talks about, like, pay-per-views and stuff that's going on, and he has, you know, interviews with dudes who are wrestling, a lot of them, you know, other companies, but still, it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah. Well, this is what's interesting because this is also changing the way that people compete. Like if you look at like the WCW, WWF days, you couldn't even mention all you could do is be really petty and just basically say that the other programming sucks. You know, like there's like the infamous story of like remember when Mankind won the belt?
Oh,
and then,
yeah,
like,
and they spoiled the results on WCW.
But it made it worse because 300,000 people or something like switched channels, and then they ended up losing anyways. Like,
that's hilarious.
Like there was all this type of thing, but now we live in a very different type of place where, assuming AEW just comes out of the gates and just kills it. Let's just say they do super huge numbers, right? I don't think the WWE will necessarily ever mention them publicly. Like, they're not going to go on Raw and mention their names.
Yeah.
They won't do that type of stuff. But if you talk about like the wrestlers, these guys are constantly on social media. They're constantly talking, constantly on YouTube, constantly doing interviews. They're going to mention those names. They're going to mention people.
You know, it's funny
unavoidable
that you say all of this and you mention AEW because, like, that's the whole reason why AEW existed was because of being the elite YouTube channel. Because what are they called? The brothers, the Young Bucks.
Yeah.
Have you ever
From
seen their
Japan?
YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, dude, it's fucking huge.
Being the elite.
Yeah.
They got themselves super over with the English-speaking audience who didn't really know what New Japan was because of their YouTube channel. And their YouTube channel is just like antics and behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah.
And they just whip out their phone and like do their little bits behind the scenes, upload it to their YouTube channel. And it was them, Kenny Omega, Adam Cole was
They
part
would
of
all
their
do
clique for a little while.
Yeah.
And,
they would all do like
then once you
cameo
put Cody
appearances.
Rhodes in the mix, and like, you know, we've talked about him before as like kind of just a genius, been in the wrestling industry his whole life, surrounded by these influential people. I mean, his dad's probably one of the most, I would say, trailblazing bookers.
Oh yeah.
Like Dusty Rhodes, he invented Starrcade, wasn't it? Like, he had all of these ideas that people just ripped off from him. So,
Amen.
But anyway, like, yeah, like, it's true. The social media game is basically created AEW, I would say, in a big part, right? Like, how are you going to get that free advertising, social media, people getting interested in your product, the charisma involved with these guys just palling around behind stage, and like, yeah, why not? The only thing I am a little bit worried about AEW, though, in the future is, as I mentioned to you, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, is they don't have any story writers. Like, there's no script. So the script is run and written by the wrestlers themselves, right?
Yeah.
So that would be all in good just as long as everyone's on the same page. But, you know, I fear, and I hope I'm wrong, but I fear it might turn into the patients running the asylum type of mayhem that happened in WCW.
Yeah. That was my fear.
But
that's when you said that when we first talked about the fact that it's like you're leaving it in the hands of the talent to sort of book themselves, kind of. It's very terrifying. You know, That worries me. But I guess they must have some type of measures in place for that because they're smart. They know what
Yeah.
they're doing. I think they I mean, if you look at what happened with WCW, it's like you have to create limitations at some point.
Sure.
Like you can't really when you start talking about people getting pushes and talking about people getting more money based on having a belt, then self-interest comes into play, and that's when things like that get kind of that could be problematic, just allowing just anyone to have the same amount of power or more power, you know. But I think they should probably they'll probably have a better
My gut feeling is they will be okay only because the AEW brand thus far is based on the core principle of wrestling. And it's about the matches. It's not about the storylines. So it's very, very simple, right? Like any storylines that arise will be this guy beat this guy at Double or Nothing. So at the next event, and it looks like, I'm looking at their schedule here, it looks like they're only doing one event per month for now, which I think is very smart because that gives them a lot of time to prepare and maybe think about where they can go with angles after that. You start a feud, and it doesn't have to be your adopted sister was like
I want a Katie
impregnated
storyline.
by frickin'
man.
Vince Russo insanity. Like
let's do a thing where like they each have they're like a love triangle. Yeah, I get that. I understand that. I feel like AEW is probably inclining a little bit more towards the New Japan type of thing.
Probably
a little more into the wrestling, and that's good. I mean, who knows, man? Maybe it's a little bit of that, and they're like, you know what? Let's throw a little drama in there too, but let's keep it for the most part focused on the wrestling, on the rankings, on who's who, and all that. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's exciting to at least see another big name in
when you
the
listen to
wrestling
Tony
field,
Khan,
right?
when you listen to Tony Khan, he was pretty knowledgeable about what he wanted to do, which I really liked. He had a really clear plan, and that's
that Jericho interview he did, right?
Yeah, it was really good. He's a real fan. Like,
do you remember what his
real
vision
fan.
was?
I think he wanted to focus a lot on the art of wrestling. He wants
Okay, right.
more of a Ring of Honor, New Japan.
I think that's
focus
the
on the match. Focus on the. I mean, not to say that you can't do a storyline, or not to say that you can't do like some type of. Not to say that you know there's still going to be like a sports entertainment aspect of it somewhat.
The drama, the pageantry, all that stuff. It's
there's
also
gonna be
what
a
we love
tiny
about
bit
it,
of that,
right? Yeah.
But it's not going to be the WWE.
I
Of
think
course.
that's the way to do it, and also don't compete with the WWE in their own backyard, where that's kind of their bread and butter. Like, let's be honest here. When was the last time you saw a WWE match where you're like, wow, that is some intense wrestling? I cannot remember. It's the wrestling itself is ho-hum. The whole pace of WWE wrestling is slowed down a lot from the stuff that you see in New Japan, where it's stiff as hell, the strong style, or the stuff that you see.
Matches are going to be way longer. Like matches. Match time is going to be way longer than that.
So focus on what you're good at, and these crazy, incredible 4 or 5 spots per match, just insane. Amazing flippy shit. Like, okay, great, I'm gonna watch that. If the storyline basically makes sense, I'm not gonna care. I mean, I'll be invested in it. I won't care that it's not insane. I don't know. Anyway, according to this, they start weekly television from October 2019. So up until that point, they have pay-per-views.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, May, June, July, August, September.
And in October, what are they? They're going to get broadcasted on television? Is that it?
It looks like it. I'm not sure which channel it's going to be on. But
they're going to get syndicated.
Yeah. TNT, it says, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the other thing that we need to discuss. Actually, I've been really thinking about this one. This is something that I've been meaning to discuss now that this came up. And I've been wondering about this, right? I mentioned before that the ecosystem of wrestling has never been bigger. If you combine the content, if you combine the online stuff that fans create.
Okay, yeah.
Everything included, the whole package, including just all the people in the game right now. AEW, New Japan, Ring of Honor, WWE. Wrestling interest in wrestling is pretty good.
Mm.
WrestleMania does pretty freaking good, man. I mean, it's
Sure.
kind of a big thing. It's kind of grown now to be kind of like a phenomenon or a spectacle, which is good because you have all this like attention from non-wrestling people once a year for a big show.
Do
better
you
than
think
anything.
that WrestleMania draws non-wrestling fans to watch?
Oh yeah, dude,
Really?
it gets national cover. It gets coverage in the United States
Mm,
from like outlets that normally never pay attention to wrestling.
interesting. Okay.
Because WrestleMania is sort of like this fun,
Yeah, it's the
once of the year spectacle.
sure, it's the
type of
Super
deal.
Bowl of
Yeah,
of
and
wrestling, right?
And ever since they moved to the stadiums, because WrestleMania used to be in like arenas sometimes, and
Mm.
but now it's like strictly stadiums. Like they'll never not do a stadium for WrestleMania. Like they want to do 70,000, 80K people or something
Yeah.
like that. So I think there's definitely like a spectacle aspect. I know people that I used to work with that I didn't care about wrestling at all, and every year they would be like, "Hey man, like we're gonna go get drunk and watch WrestleMania." You know, like, they would just like watch it for fun because it was like, and then it'd be like a celebrity and it'd be cool. I get that. I think that's cool. Respect it. But what I'm trying to say is, if you think about the money that is spent on weekly television, and if you look, I mean, we just saw data that said that 2018 had the lowest ratings in years, maybe even ever. Probably in years. I don't think ever.
Yeah,
What did
I
it say?
do
It was-
remember hearing that.
What did that
it's
article
getting
say?
really, really low.
There was an article that said that the ratings are super low in 2018 for I think it was Raw, and I don't know about SmackDown.
Let's take a look.
Let's look at those.
So WWE Raw record low viewership for the second consecutive week. This was in October 2018. Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
this. My brother mentioned this to me, and I think we ended up watching those shows just because they were kind of cringeworthy.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, that was the return of the Brothers of Destruction.
So okay, like this is funny, right? The record low for WWE viewership in October is Raw gets 2.3 million viewers and SmackDown got 2.1 million viewers, which is still insanely high. Like that's an amazing viewership. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, I guess the idea is that, like...
But that's down from
That's-
about 3 million on Raw in August of 2018 and 2.5 million SmackDown in August. So
Right.
I suppose, like, okay, all things
here's
considered.
the thing. So
yeah.
here's my question. Interest in wrestling, I think, is there, for sure. I think people are interested. I think people I think people do care about wrestling content. But the ratings suck. So what is going to be the future of weekly televised wrestling, and should that change?
Okay, so here's one of the issues that I have with Raw and SmackDown now in its current format. I talked to my brother about this a lot as well, right? Like, it's a 3 or 4 hour show. It's 3 hours, I think, now, right? So you're watching SmackDown from, is it
Dude,
7 p.m.
yeah.
until 11? Or like 7 until 10? Like, it's super long.
SmackDown Live is, yeah, dude, it's nuts. I mean, same
It's
thing with
really,
freaking
really
Raw.
long. The format has recently been, they tried to switch it up a little bit, but they kind of failed. But it's recently been like, open the show with a promo, someone cuts
That's
a promo
so
for like
long.
20 minutes.
It's so fucking long.
A lot of the time they don't even reference like the things that have been happening. Sometimes they do. They talk a little bit about what happened last week or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like your first commercial break after however long it was, 15 minutes,
yeah.
you haven't even seen a single bit of wrestling yet.
Well, yeah, it's like they don't even care. The runtime currently of WWE SmackDown, including commercials, is 120 minutes.
So that's 3 hours. No, that's
It's
2 hours. That doesn't seem right.
But
How long is Raw?
Raw is 3 hours.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because they moved it, yeah, it's 180 minutes.
That's insane. 3
Raw
hours.
is 180
Good lord.
minutes long. which is absolutely insane. And it's been that way for a couple years now. I remember, like, before I even moved out to France, like, it was already at 100, it was already at 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is madness. This is so long. Like, if you think about it, how long is WrestleMania?
WrestleMania
It's like-
now, I
it's
think,
like
is 8 hours long.
This is not necessary.
Yeah.
We don't need this much length.
Yeah, I think, okay.
No, WrestleMania is like 5 hours, I think, but still, that's
Including the
that's
pre,
absolute madness.
including the pre-show, I think it's 8 hours.
Oh my god, that's fucking absurd.
Hold on, let's check for
Yeah,
2018.
runtime.
What was it for 2018?
Here it is. Runtime 314 minutes.
314.
What is 314 minutes? 5 hours.
Okay, divided by 60. It's
5
5
hours
hours.
and 14 minutes.
Yeah, Jesus.
That's brutal. That's brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe 4 hours is probably maybe 3 hours and 45 minutes might be. I mean, considering it's the show of shows or whatever, and I
Yeah.
get they have to throw in everything.
Okay, this is hilarious.
Is madness.
It's here. It is reported that this year's WrestleMania is on track to run as long, if not longer, than 2 hours. Are you kidding me?
What?
According to the upcoming blah 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 blah, it will kick off at 5 p.m., run for 2 hours. Then at 7 p.m., WrestleMania will begin and slot. Oh, excuse me. This is just the pre-show. So the pre-show is 2 hours, and whatever. Anyway, WrestleMania 34 is scheduled for 7+ hour runtime, according to this
Are you
one.
serious? No, that can't
Yeah.
be true. That's
But
too long.
I bet like that includes pre-show, the like interviews and stuff that they do, all the little fanfare and crap. So like,
Yeah. Little interesting note. I'm on the IMDb of WrestleMania, and it says stars: Brock Lesnar, AJ Styles, and then for Roman Reigns it says Joe Anoa'i. So they don't even call
No.
him Roman Reigns; they call him
he
Joe
really
Anoa'i.
broke kayfabe now, huh?
Very breaking kayfabe. Yeah.
Is AJ Styles? Well, AJ Styles is actually called AJ Styles.
Well, his
apparently.
name is Alan Jones. His real name is Alan Jones.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, as Alan Jones. I
AJ
see.
Styles.
Joe
But here
Anoa'i.
they just called him Joe Anoa'i for Roman Reigns.
Anyway, cool.
Let's wrap this bad boy up.